Hello and welcome to another episode of A Day in the District. I'm your host, Chelsea Whittington. A Day in the District is a program designed to help you, the viewer, stay connected to your Gary Community School Corporation. One of my guests today is certainly no stranger to this platform. She is none other than our manager of the Gary Community School Corporation, Dr. Paige McNulty. And I'm so pleased to be joined by my friend and colleague and our state senator, Senator Eddie Melton. Hello, Eddie, Dr.
Hey.
Paige.
Hello.
Hey.
Glad to be here.
I am glad to have you. It's always a privilege and an honor to have individuals in leadership to come onto the show because we like to have our community stay up to date, stay informed about the things that are happening around the district. And in these parts, government and school corporations go together for great partnerships. But before we jump into the depths of all the things that are happening around the district, Eddie, I wanted to start with you because you are a graduate of the Gary schools.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about your times back at Dear Horace Mann.
Well, I can even go back further than that.
Okay.
All right. Melton Elementary. I went to Jefferson Elementary, Beckman Middle School, then on a Horace Mann. So, Gary Schools made me into the person I am today. Forever grateful for the people and the family and relationships that we've been able to establish over the years with teachers, administrators, and former classmates. So, just having that foundation meant everything to me.
Indeed. Same here. Football, a little bit?
Well, one of the, I would say, opportunities that helped protect me as a youth was being able to play sports. Okay. And when I say protect me, we know that during that time frame, during the early 90s, Gary, it was a pretty tough experience growing up. And football gave me that foundation, gave me that family structure, that discipline that I needed in my life at that time. So starting from all the way from Beckman, 7th grade, all the way to Horace Mann, and then it helped me pay for college. It gave me the opportunity to show what Gary was about in another state. I attended Kentucky State University, which is in Frankfort, Kentucky. And again, for someone that hadn't been out of Gary as a kid, not often, to go to a different state and to represent your city, and going to a HBCU is a whole nother experience in terms of being able to understand the history of a HBCU and be able to bring that back home was even more of a blessing and benefit.
Yes, and so when I heard you were coming today, I knew I wanted to give you the opportunity to stroll down memory lane. You mentioned also that you are able to build and forge relationships with teachers. Do you ever run back into them now and they're like, my student is a state senator? How does that feel?
It's rewarding to know that they're still with us, number one, but to know that they know that they played a part in investing in that next generation. And I think that's what helps me from all the way as being a mentor to today as a state senator. And we're going to continue to mentor no matter what. But when I run into I think her name was Miss Arco when I was in school. I forgot her new name now, but she was my art teacher in the 3rd grade. And every time we see each other, we have those memories, right?
Yeah.
And she remembered me from the 3rd grade. So that's things you will never forget, right? That feeling that a certain teacher or a certain administrator made you feel, and that brings you back to that time in history.
Thank you, Eddie. Dr. McNulty, I see you nodding. As a former teacher, as an administrator, I know that you too encounter young people whose lives you've touched. But now that we're in present day, and the two of you, I guess, initially encountered during a time when your title was emergency manager. And there have been some things that have transpired over time, working together from the government side to a school corporation side that was able to catapult or advance us out of that title into just manager of the
Right.
Gary schools. And one in particular that we want to talk about today is some legislation that you authored, Senator Melton. That's Bill 1065. So,
Right.
Dr. McNulty, you have your list that I want you to
do.
kind of jump in and talk a little bit about so that our community members understand how it was developed and what it's earmarked for, because you just can't spend it on anything.
Right. So just also, I've known Senator Melton before I even started working in Gary. He
Okay.
was very instrumental in helping with a lot of the efforts over in East Chicago when we had the lead crisis happening there and several other initiatives. So he's always been a big proponent of helping schools and kids and those types of things. So our relationship has been long and always been towards doing what's best for helping kids and students. So
Absolutely.
just want to make sure I said that. And so now we fast forward to our work here together in Gary. And so yes, that started with lots of things that needed to happen here. So when I arrived here, 1065 was already in place, and I'll let Senator Melton explain that, but it's been hugely impactful for the things that we've been able to accomplish as far as capital projects and getting the facilities up to where they needed to be so that the students had a good place
Yeah.
to work, a good place to learn and to thrive and to recruit new kids back to our district.
Makes
So,
perfect sense.
yeah.
So, Eddie, will take us back to the beginning of the logic behind 1065. How did it come about? And then in our next segment, we'll get into the details of what it's been doing.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. When I was sworn in 2017, I took office. That was really at the height of a lot of the financial woes and issues that the district was struggling with. My predecessor, Senator Earlene Rogers, had been fighting to make sure that the district had the resources necessary and needed. And at that point in time, we weren't in an emergency state. We had assistance from the state before I was elected. Right around that time when I got sworn in, it was frightening for everyone in the community. And we're still, going through those transitions. But one of the things that we realized is that regardless of whatever side of an issue that you may have, the children should remain first in the conversation. And that's one of the things as a legislator, myself and our delegation, we try to make sure that they stay in the forefront of every conversation downstate. Now, granted, Gary has a history downstate, and that it has kind of been an issue that we had to navigate around and deal with and even fight against certain issues. So with us being placed under that state takeover, we still felt that every child deserved a safe, clean learning environment. When you have children that ride past other facilities and say, why can't we have that football field? Why can't we have that technology? As someone that represents this community, I want to ensure that the children have those essentials.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there as we wrap up this segment. And when we come back, we're going to talk more 1065, how it's working, and what's next with Senator Eddie Melton and Dr. Paige McNulty. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
It's gross. I don't really want to talk about it.
She didn't want to at first, but I mean, it's no big deal. Everybody does it.
I was ready, totally ready, because we had been practicing this dance for weeks.
He was supposed to take this girl to this dance, but
I sprained my ankle at track practice.
I hate sharing anything personal. It's so disgusting.
For the dance, I let her wear my shoes and she hated it, but I thought she looked great in them.
he could barely even walk.
I ended up taking some pills for my pain.
Yeah, they were my mom's, but
It didn't go well.
If it's not yours,
If it's not yours,
if it's not yours,
Hey you,
don't take it.
don't take it.
don't take it.
don't take it. You won't believe what happened next.
When I told my friends I wanted to become an astronaut, they laughed and called me a space cadet. Fortunately, my parents took me seriously. They enrolled me in Gary Community Schools where I had STEM summer camp, dual credit classes, and certified teachers. Now, I'm a Lilly Scholar and my folks are all over the moon.
Gary Schools. Strong, resilient, built for education.
Welcome back to A Day in the District. I'm your host, Chelsea Whittington, and A Day in the District, as you well know, is a program designed to help you, the viewer, stay connected to your Gary Community School Corporation. I am still pleased to have our guests here as we talk more about Bill 1065 and all things that focus on the betterment of the education for children. Senator Melton, you were talking to us about how Bill 1065 came about.
Right.
Please continue.
Well, we talked about the need at that time. Many of our schools, the facilities are still in shambles, leaking roofs, children in classroom with buckets of water, collecting them, and just a variety of issues across the board. And while we were still paying back a loan from the state, we figured, why weren't we reinvesting in our infrastructure? The state gave us several $1 million, right, to keep us afloat prior to the state takeover. I just made the request that we defer those payments and invest in our infrastructure to make sure our kids had a clean and healthy and safe environment. But beyond that, in addition to that, I would say public safety issues as well, because there were a lot of facilities that needed demolition. There were several frightful and scary stories that were in the news about fatalities in the community that were tied to blight and abandoned structures. So we know that once an abandoned structure is alleviated, it shows in growth and opportunity for a community, and it increased property values for neighbors. So it was just a win-win for folks in terms of that. But I think the ultimate win is making sure that every child has the amenities, the resources and the assets in a school building that add to that learning environment and that learning experience.
Okay. Now, Dr. McNulty, Bill 1065 is in place, you're in place, opportunities in place, and while we know there are other resources that flooded into the district, let's talk about 1065 and what those dollars and Eddie's fighting downstate doing. What did that result in?
Yeah, so we originally started with 1065 as our bucket of money towards capital improvements, as we've talked about. And the bucket of money is $25 million, and we approximately get about $423,000 a month, which has to accumulate so that we can use it towards projects that are coming
That's
up.
so
in the
important. So people thought that we just
get
had
the whole
a big
25,
deposit,
no,
and that's not
so
true.
we get $423,000 or so a month, and so with that, then we sought out a lot of community input on what projects needed to be done, and of course our facilities director did an outlay. We had an architecture firm that came and did an assessment of the facilities so that we could prioritize what needed to happen with that. And so with that, I kind of made a list so that I could talk about some of the projects that have been done with that money, because we've spent almost all of it. But we did the track, as you remember, which has been wildly successful, so that we could have our own home track. The kids were running inside the school, and it was bad. We have a new playground at Beveridge, that we've used our 1065 money with, which has been wonderful. Our press box for the football field needed to be done. It was unsafe. We couldn't go up into the press box, so that's been a huge improvement. The bleachers were all painted on the football stadium, and we have all new paint within the district at all the schools. The schools all needed fresh paint within the hallways and lockers. We also all the bleachers are being replaced at the high school. Those bleachers are over 30 years old. They weren't ADA compliant, so all those, as we speak, are being replaced in sections so that they'll have fresh new bleachers for our students, and we'll be able to use them now for more than just games. We can have community meetings. We can have, plays.
I remember
lots
those
of things
bleachers
so that we
well,
can
and
use
being
them.
terrified as a child trying to go up
Handrails. It's going to be very nice when we're done.
Good.
We were also able to redo our baseball and softball fields with 1065. The new Jumbotron as a result of 1065. We were able to lay new fiber and internet capabilities at all of our fields around the district without those funds. We were also able to do all new gates and fencing at our schools to keep them safe and keep our fields and playgrounds safe as well. All the new door locks at all of our buildings are as a result of 1065. So our doors, none of the door locks worked, so we couldn't keep things locked up if they're, God forbid, needed something, we need to go on a lockdown. So all of those have been replaced this year. All of the theater chairs, as Mark Spencer is cheering, I'm sure somewhere right now, are being replaced, and all the theater floors are being replaced due to 1065. The HVAC, the plumbing, and the demolition of Lou Wallace. So those are big ticket items that were desperately needed and have all been already encumbered and are already done or near completion due to those funds. We have approximately $3 million left with 1065, and we plan on using the remaining dollars for demolition. And we have 4 buildings remaining that we own.
Okay.
Ambridge, Melton, Norton, and Webster. When I got here, we had 28 buildings. I have sold all of those buildings, and we're down to 4. They're still up for sale if you're listening at a really good price.
Go to GarySchools.org.
Otherwise, we still have those 4, and I am going to be holding a community meeting here in the near future, and we will be sending out a survey because we would like to get some community input onto which of those buildings in priority order the community would like me to work on as far as demoing, because $3 million will not be enough to demo all 4 of them, but it might be enough to demo 1 or 2 of them, and then I can use the remaining dollars to fence in the other 2 until they're sold or purposed otherwise. So,
Doc, I think that that's one of the things that people don't realize, how expensive demolition is.
Yes.
It's not just knock it down and haul it away. There's like rewiring, and you have to look at the land survey.
Asbestos.
And those kinds of things.
Yes, all those things have to be taken into account. So
Senator Melton, real quick before we end this segment, Dr. McNulty gave this long list, and I saw you sitting there listening intently. That's got to make you feel good to hear these things being done. I know there's more, but how did that make you feel?
No, it's good to know that all our schools are getting the needed facelifts and improvements that's needed. I think it's also important that the community understands when we talk about the reasoning why we have to shrink a footprint and downsize it is over the years we've lost a lot of students, and we have to recruit new students back into the district to be successful fiscally and financially. So a lot of these amenities, parents are looking for those safe environments and those environments that's going to give them that benefit. So I think it's always important to remind the public, you know, when we were in school, we were probably 20, 30,000 students. And now we were probably, 4,500 students. That's a significant shrink in footprint. The city at one point had 150, 170,000 people. And now, based off the U.S. Census, we're around 70,000 folks, citizens in the city of Gary. So we have to be mindful of the adjustment that we have to do as a community and how we approach that.
And when we come back, we're going to talk both again with Dr. McNulty and Senator Eddie Melton on how we move forward. Stay right there. We'll be right back.
hello, my name is Dr. Paige McNulty. I'm the manager for the Gary Community School Corporation, and I am pleased to be joined today with the Jackson 5 family members, Tito and Marlon Jackson.
Hi,
how are you? Thanks for being here today.
Again. Not only are we members of the world-famous Jackson 5, but we are proud products of the Gary schools.
Growing up in Gary, our school system afforded great opportunities from academics to extracurricular activities.
And today is no different. This is why we encourage you to enroll your child in the Gary schools today.
For more information, please call 219-881-5466 or visit GarySchools.org. And please remember, enroll in Gary Schools today.
Yes, right. Definitely enroll.
Gary Schools.
Strong, resilient.
Built for education.
Welcome back to the final segment of A Day in the District. I have been chatting with our manager of the Gary Schools, Dr. Paige McNulty, and Indiana State Senator Eddie Melton. We had a nice, robust conversation about Bill 1065. And I would be remiss, Doc, if we didn't talk about our good old referendum days where we pound the pavement and explain to our residents how needed dollars are, because 1065 only goes so far. And so with the passage of the referendum, we were also able to make more improvements in the district. If you would talk a little bit about that, Doc, and then we'll move into where we're headed from a legislative standpoint.
Yes, actually, I just finished a meeting with 2 other superintendents from the region here who are getting ready to start a referendum, asking advice about what we did that made it so successful. And my number one thing was the community support from the community leaders and from our teaching staff and everybody involved. We had a lot of people who worked with us who knew the importance that this had for our students and for our community. So it wasn't one person. We must have had 50 people, as you know, on our committee that worked tirelessly day in and day out to make sure that that was successful. And so with the passage of the referendum, which passed, 64 to whatever, was a large number. That allowed us to be able to give our teachers raises for the first time. You can pass a referendum, let me back up, for operating or for capital. So the 1065 money that we were just talking about obviously is all capital. So we passed a referendum which was operating, which you can only use, which were for the 5 questions that were on the ballot, and one of those were for salaries of our teachers and our instructional staff, as well as preschool, extracurricular activities, and to help pay off the debt that we had. And so we've done that. Our teachers had not had a raise in over 12 years. We've been able to give them some great raises over the last several years. And then we've also now been able to use that towards a lot of our debt and preschool initiatives and extracurricular, as you can see, with our football field and other things. So those are separate pots of money that can't be intermixed. And then, of course, we have the ESSER pot of money that everybody asks about. And that was money that we got because of COVID. It has allowed us to do after-school initiatives and also capital improvements.
Yes, I was going to mention that in the midst of all these things we talked about, 1065 and then the referendum and then COVID struck.
Correct.
So that required us to pivot. That required us to purchase devices that we were going to do anyway for take home for students. And so all of these things have come together nicely to play as far as things that need to be done for our children. And as you mentioned earlier, Senator Melton, about what they expect and require and need when it comes to when they look at other school districts. And so we're starting to see a lot of that, them being proud when we're welcoming visitors into our facilities, into our stadium, onto our football field. But there's more work. And so from a legislative standpoint, Senator Melton, can you give us insight on what are some next steps in partnership and what's coming down the pike legislatively that concerns schools?
I think you hit it on the head in terms of, we all know there's a lot of work to do. And we know that there's efforts to improve academics as a whole, because this is school. Right. And the whole objective is to educate our children. So just as someone that represents the community, I try my best to articulate that message back to Dr. McNulty and to my colleagues downstate on still what are the gaps that we need. And we know that academics is an extremely important part of that. Part 2 is me communicating that the community is ready for it to return fully back into a local control, but figuring out what that looks like and hearing back from the community on what that should look like into the future. Because what we have to be mindful of is, what do we want education to look like in our community for the future and moving forward? And we have to lay a very good foundation right now, making sure that our school corporation is provided the resources from the state level and the support. However, we also know that we have the ability to govern and lead the district locally as well. And this is looking into the future. But we need the support of everyone as a community, right? And I know there's a lot of different perspectives and opinions on issues, but at the end of the day, we can have those differences. But let's figure out a way to come back to the table to figure out collectively how do we move things forward, be it if it's from an academic perspective or what it's going to look like moving towards into the future.
Sure. In essence, we need a plan. So I have been reading about a special event that you have coming up, because we always talk about resources for your constituents, which includes our students, which includes our parents, et cetera. You're having a career resource fair coming up later this month. Tell us about that.
So I partner with the Center for Workforce Innovations, Work One, and this is extremely important, especially for some of the parents and even the students. So we have some of the region's top employers. We have U.S. Steel will be there, BP, Cleveland Cliffs. So the top employers of the region will be at the Railcat Stadium October 22nd. That's a Saturday. Full day of workshops as well as some interviews on the spot that they'll be providing. And this is just an example of, with communication and outreach and relationships, we can really establish and get some traction on things. Employers across the state and even nationally are having issues with hiring folks. There's a shortage. There's a shortage with bus drivers. There's a shortage with teachers. Indiana is at the top when it looks at teacher shortages, right? But every profession is looking at a shortage. So when we talk about where do we go from here, we got to prepare our workforce. And Gary is not the old steel town that it once was. We have to figure out what do we want to do from a economic development and workforce development, but K through 12 plays a critical role in that, because folks that's looking to move into Gary, they're looking at the school system, they're looking at housing quality, they're looking at all of those things to figure out, is this a place that we want to be, and do they have the workforce that's going to support us? So I'm just simply trying to connect those dots. I know there are a lot of folks that's out of work, or they're looking to promote and advance their profession or careers. This is a good opportunity for them to come out October 22nd at the Railcat Stadium.
Is there a registration or something they need to do in order to get involved?
Well, they can go to Center Workforce Innovations website, and they can get all the details there. The registration, I don't think it's going to be mandatory, but we advise them to kind of register and get set up and to come.
Yes. Dr. McNulty, I'm reading your mind. As we talk about the workforce development piece, we are doing our part over at the Gary Area Career Center, introducing our young people who some are in the studio today working the cameras to those various life experiences. As we close out, would you just give a plea to our community and parents of staying involved, Doc?
Always. You know, I say that everywhere I go. We need everyone working together. When we work together with the city and our delegates and our parents, we get so much more momentum. And I think that we have already made huge strides towards positive improvement, and we want to continue that. So we need all of our parents, all of our community members to come work with us. We're okay with healthy bantering because we're going to get to the end result in a good way at the end of the day.
As Senator Melton says, come to the table. Thank you both for being a part of A Day in the District today. And I want to thank you, the viewers, for watching. We encourage you to stay connected to your Gary Community School Corporation by visiting our website at garyschools.org. And be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I have been your host, Chelsea Whittington. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, it's all about our young people. Until next time, everybody have a great day. We'll see you soon.